and welcome to the Hearts Afire Podcast. Before the pandemic, healthcare ministry was already a very challenging field. And ever since COVID hit, it became arguably the most difficult type of ministry to be presently in. On today's episode, we'll learn more about healthcare ministry from Sister Noreen Walsh and what it's like to care for the sick. Before we get to our discussion, I'd like to remind you that whether you're watching this episode live or listening to it on a podcast, make sure to never miss an episode by clicking the subscribe button now. We appreciate your support of the Hearts Afire Podcast. Now on to today's discussion with our guest, Sister Noreen. For those of you who don't know her, Sister Noreen presently ministers as the Sisters of St. Dominic's Healthcare Coordinator. Now, welcome, Sister Noreen. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Katie. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for allowing me to share a few moments about the healthcare ministry.
So, Sister Noreen, it's great to see you. First off, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank God.
So, as I previously mentioned, today's topic is all about healthcare ministry. So tell our listeners, Sister Noreen, what drew you to pursue healthcare ministry?
In reflecting on my call to the healthcare ministry, it had a unique history. For 12 years, I was a junior high school math teacher, and with a ministry which I enjoyed very much. Every summer, though, I worked with our sisters on the infirmary floor. Certainly a new experience for me, and one in which I received much more than I gave. When I was asked to pursue graduate math studies, my undergraduate background did not deem this feasible in the near future. I knew the need for nursing in the congregation, so I decided to put a change of ministry to prayer. Many little things fell into place so that I took it as a sign that this is where God wanted me now. I have engaged in this ministry for over 40 years, tending mostly to geriatric patients in the hospital setting, the home care setting, and presently as healthcare coordinator in the congregation.
Great, and thank you for sharing that with us. And, you just mentioned 40 years in your ministry, and that's remarkable. And I'm sure COVID changed your ministry. And if you could share with our listeners, how has your ministry changed since the pandemic?
One of my paramount roles as the healthcare coordinator is to be a companion for sisters navigating the healthcare system. Pandemic changed all of this. I was no longer able to be physically present with my sisters at any medical appointments. I had to sit in the car while they were in with the doctor. I was unable to accompany our critically ill sisters in an ambulance to a hospital. But what was even more problematic was I was no longer able to be at the bedside of a dying sister. Our frail elderly sisters did not understand the concept of telemedicine and Zoom. It did not lessen their anxiety when they were discussing their health issues. The fact that I was not able to be physically present was probably the greatest impediment during the pandemic for me.
And Sister Noreen, what does it mean for you? You talk about before your physical presence there and just being there, whether it's, by bedside in a hospital or at a doctor's appointment or just, helping a sister out with dealing with anxiety from, talking about medical treatment. And what does it mean to you to care for the sick?
Caring for the sick is a privilege. I think it put the happenings in my own life in proper perspective. To be able to provide comfort and presence to someone compromised and frightened by physical or mental limitations was a fundamental part of nursing for me. As I stated earlier, more has been given to me by the sick than I have given. Many have showed me not only how to live, but how to die.
And those are very powerful words to hear from you. And, just kind of diving into that topic a little bit more. Do you believe there's a connection between your ministry of caring for the sick as in regards to the mission of the Sisters of St. Dominic? And if so, describe it for our listeners.
Very much so. To paraphrase our mission statement, we preach the good news of the compassionate love of God, with a special consciousness and presence to those who are poor. Now, poor not only economically, but for the sick. Many have been stripped of their independence by failing health. Many have had limited resources put on them, putting them into the margins of society because of the cost of health care. Advocacy was paramount, I believe, in connecting our ministry with the mission of the congregation.
And I couldn't agree with that more. And that's what makes your ministry, and as well as the ministry of many of the sisters so admirable, within the congregation. And Sister Noreen, final question for you today. What advice would you give to those who are in healthcare ministry?
Patient advocacy, I feel, and compassionate care are essential for anyone who is going into the healthcare ministry. The healthcare system here in New York is crumbling. Insurance companies are now dictating patient care. It is more important than ever to assist the patient to navigate the system. The healthcare person has to be companions at appointments, someone to listen, someone to explain in languages that they understand what the provider is saying, someone to advocate for them. The rights of the patient have to be upheld. The healthcare minister can be the patient's greatest advocate. However, don't get so mired in bureaucracy that you forget that compassionate care is paramount for you to give.
I couldn't agree with those words more, and how especially compassionate care. And I think that makes, can very well dictate what the patient experience is. And, it just makes your ministry so vital. And I know you are quite the busy woman. For our listeners who don't know Sister Noreen, she's the healthcare coordinator for the congregation. And, she is a very busy woman between, tending to all of the healthcare needs of the sisters. And, we thank her for her time today and, just discussing your ministry and taking a deep dive into healthcare ministry with us. And we hope that you'll join us for future discussions.
Okay, thank you, Katie, for allowing me to share for a few moments on healthcare.
All right, thank you, Sister Noreen. Have a good one.
You too.
And before we go, I'd like to remind you that if you enjoyed today's discussion, please let us know by giving the Hearts Afire Podcast a 5-star rating on wherever you listen to your podcasts. We hope that you will tune into our next discussion with Sister Grace Augustine Canavari, who will join us to discuss the importance of kindness to others. Thank you again for tuning into the Hearts Afire Podcast, and please know that you are in the daily prayers of our sisters and associates.